Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Today we celebrate Palm Sunday, which is the commemoration of the Lord's triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And we celebrate his kingship, but we also are faced with a problem now that we look back on history. We're faced with the problem that at the time that they're welcoming him with a certain expectation of a mighty king, we also know that if that happened, let's say on a Sunday, this triumphant entry, just that Friday coming, he would be accused, arrested, he would be tried and sentenced as a common criminal. We may not realize, and I didn't realize until recently, that when Jesus was coming into Jerusalem with his procession on a donkey, that same day, Roman historians record that there was another procession that took place in the city that day. And it was a procession of Roman centurions and cavalry. So I'd like you to turn on your imagination now, and just for a moment, imagine being in this center place, this holy place, Jerusalem. And imagine that you are seeing both processions. You're seeing Jesus come in on a young donkey. And you're seeing these Roman centurions and cavalry on horseback and on foot. They're wearing leather armor, hammered helmets, and and also swords and spears and the like. You can hear the Roman drums dun, 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 to the march, the cadence of a march. And you experience both processions. Now the Romans entered in on the opposite side of Jerusalem. And they entered in with might. And their intention was to show again their power. And the reason is because 80 years before all of this took place, 80 years before, the Romans had overtaken Jerusalem from the Jewish people. So there were very frequent uprisings that the Jewish people would have, people who were rebelling against the Roman rule. And so the Romans, Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea, he led in this Roman military might as a spectacle, if you will. A spectacle to show we're still in charge here. Nobody uprise here. So if the Roman military were demonstrating their might, the opposite was true of Jesus. The absolute opposite, which was symbolized by the opposite direction in the city from which they came. So Jesus actually instructs his disciples and says, go and into the city, and there will be a colt, a young donkey tied there. Ask the owner if you might use his donkey. Ask him. Don't take it. Ask him. And tell him that the Lord has need of it. And then Jesus quotes Zechariah. He says, see, your king is coming to you. Specifically, there's a word he uses from Zechariah. Gentle. Gentle. And on a donkey. God has not forsaken you. God has not abandoned you, and he hasn't betrayed you, and he will deliver you. And at that time, the message that Jesus is sending through Zechariah, who was the prophet, of course, he's telling the Jewish people because they're oppressed by Rome. They've been oppressed in many ways, in many times. but he was speaking to the Jewish people at that time, saying, God has not forgotten you. And so I'm going to pause in the memory of that moment and just say that to you today. God has not forgotten you. You know, we do have our expectations of what we want and hope for in our life. So listen to the Lord's voice to you today, that he has not forgotten you. He will deliver you. It won't be the way that you expect. It just won't. He comes on a slow riding donkey, not just a donkey. I mean, if you really read the scriptures, he comes on a slow riding donkey. Zacharias, he says that the Messiah on a donkey is a prophecy of peace. Emanuel Swedenborg would go into the correspondence of a donkey, and he would say that Christ on the donkey is a symbol of how the divine itself, whatever you call God, the Lord, Jesus, Abba, Jehovah, whatever you call the divine, Jesus on that slow riding animal, that donkey, is a correspondence of the divine guiding even your most earthly, natural self. That the divine is coming in to guide and manage our lives. It's a powerful, powerful symbol that comes out of the correspondences with the Swedenborgian theology. And it also comes as a reminder that there is not one space in your life, not one space where God isn't. You know, we were just sharing in our adult discussion group about our infirmities. You know, whether it's a hurt back or a stroke or arthritis, whatever it is that we're dealing with, cancer, whatever it is, maybe it's chronic fear and worry and anxiety. Whatever it is that you have or you're dealing with, Jesus on that donkey is a symbol and a reminder that even our most human selves, our most human nature is covered. God is saying, I've got you, and I've got the reins. Love has the reins and owns us in the very best sense. And I've been really getting that lately. I sometimes feel afraid if I'm 51, what's going to happen with my rheumatoid arthritis when I'm 70? When I'm 64, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I think to myself, if I hurt this bad with rheumatoid arthritis at 51, what about that?
It'll be cured by then.
Yeah. But you know what the answer was? I've got you. And you're mine. Whatever is sick or diseased in a body, anybody's body, that body is God's body in you. God's got you. And there's so much more to you and what you're going through than the things that we worry about and the things that cause us pain. So, the two processions, back to the story, the two processions couldn't have sent two more different messages. The Romans were sending the message that I will crush all who oppose me. I will crush you. I will break you. And Jesus was saying, I bring peace, tranquility, and the shalom of God for all people. And I bring it slowly, and I bring it into your humanity. And I come in a way you do not expect and do not want. Linsky and Heifetz are two authors who write about leadership. And they talk about leadership as an art. The art is to lead the people that are with you in such a way that when you disappoint them, they can absorb it at a rate so that they stay with you. Because, and why do we talk about leaders disappointing followers? Because we make plans and God laughs, right? You know, that's kind of the saying now. You know, we have our plans and we have our expectations and our demands, don't we? But leaders have the art, they need the art and the skill of disappointing their followers at a rate in a way that they can absorb. So these authors said Jesus had a problem because when he came into Jerusalem and then Friday he was crucified, he disappointed them at a rate they couldn't absorb. That was Jesus' problem. So what did they do? They turned away. They couldn't absorb what he had to offer. They didn't want it, so they turned on him. Those closest to him betrayed him and turned away. So, the question for us in 2017 on this beautiful April day, as we reflect on God's wisdom long ago, that is just as important to us today. The question is, if you were in Jerusalem, if just for a moment you could put yourself there, and you were in Jerusalem, and you saw both processions, and you saw this impressive military march, and then you saw this man that you heard of a little bit, but you didn't really know him, and you saw him coming in slowly on a donkey, and there were a few people waving and hoping in him. If you were just standing there in Jerusalem, who would you follow? Because that's the question of the day. And that's the question for us every day. Do you follow might and power or love? Do you follow the way things that they do today because that's the way that we do them? Or do you follow the way that you feel the divine is leading you today? Even if everybody else laughs. Even if everybody else says, wow, you're out of touch. Or, you're crazy. Nobody does that. The question is, do you follow the masses? Or do you follow where God leads you, which may be with the masses, but it may not. And it may lead you in some scary, unpredictable places, the unknown. So there's two choices. There's two processions into Jerusalem that day. Two processions with opposite presentations and opposite messages. And there's two theologies, force and might, or gentleness and humility. That's why I love the current Pope. He's gentle of heart and humble. And there's two choices that we make every day, and they happen moment after moment after moment. Might and force, or gentleness, kindness, and humility. That's the choice before us.